Welcome to the Intentional Household Podcast. In episode 6, we talked about how you can find babysitters. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about how you can unlock the full potential of your babysitter and use your babysitter in ways that you may not have thought of before and really make your babysitter a superstar in your household. So stay tuned. Alex, let's get into babysitters, differences between babysitters and nannies, because we have both, because there are different ways you can utilize them. Nanny, a lot of the time, they're there full-time, part-time, very regularly, and it's very easy to set your performance expectations with them and have structures in place in how they can support the household. But then there's also the place for babysitters to help regularly and far beyond just as help for date night.
Well, and I think, even before talking about the babysitter and the nanny, let's create a new category and we will talk about training and recruiting your future babysitter.
So actually, there is a term for it, which people refer to as mother's helpers.
Or household helpers.
So in this case, I think that it's more open if we refer to it as a household helper, because they may be helping, not a mother.
Well, and I think that's where we should start in today's episode, is talking about the household helper, because that is someone that someone can find today to then recruit them to be their future babysitter. And that one there can relieve so much pressure just by helping out the parent that may be home at that time, right? And what I mean by that is we've all been in those circumstances where, let's say, a spouse has to stay late and one spouse is at home with the rest of the children. And that causes a stressful situation in the marriage, because then the one spouse that's home with the children becomes overwhelmed. And then they're resentful towards the other spouse that is staying late, doing something else. And then that causes tension. And everything we talk about in an intentional household is to reduce tension and remove friction. So if you find that household helper to help out when people have to do things that are beyond, let's say, the 9 to 5, it can remove a lot of pressure. So Laura, why don't you talk about how you've utilized household helpers in our household, so we don't have the pressure when I'm like, hey, and by the way, I do actually have to do something late tonight, but hey, I have to do something this evening, so I'm not going to be home to help with the kids. And you're like, no big deal. That's okay, because I have my household helper coming and they're gonna do a great job and relieve me of that stress.
Sometimes I just need an extra set of hands. So if you're away and I'm still there managing the 3 kids, it's a lot to manage on my own. So having someone come, that is when I would call in the tween helper to help to lighten the load. So after dinner, we may be going out to the park. And sometimes it is a lot just for me to take the 3 kids out to the park, because 1 wants to go in one direction and 2 want to go in the other direction. So being an extra set of hands, extra set of eyes as well, if we're going out. Also, when it comes to bedtime, that extra set of hands to put the kids down, because we do the bedtime process with the 3 kids at the same time. And it really is a 2-person job. So having that individual help with the bedtime process can really lighten the load there.
Well, I'm gonna correct you there. It's actually a 3-person job, but you only have 2 people.
That's true. It would be nice to have a 3rd person help us with that, but we don't bring in the extra set of hands for that. The other time when we like to use a helper is if we're going out to a museum or out in the public, let's just say, where it is busy and we want one-on-one focus or attention with our kids.
Let's use a relevant example. We just did this weekend. We went to the Lego Discovery Center with all 3 children. And before we went, you had talked to another family and they're like, wow, that's a really busy place and it's stressful. And when we finished up at the Discovery Center, we were like, that was a great experience. We definitely do that again. Yes, it was busy, but because we had a helper with us, each kid had a designated representative that could handle them, and they could run around and be free. And it was like a tag team too. Sometimes like as one kid runs by and you shift on a kid and the other person goes with that kid, but it just gave the man-on-man coverage and created an environment that wasn't stressful for us.
It wasn't. It was the buddy system. Before we entered the Discovery Center, we talked about who is pairing up, who's your buddy. And it worked out quite nicely, actually. There were no fights in that regard. And we had a great time. We enjoyed it. And we weren't stressed throughout the process because I knew who I was responsible for. And that was it.
And also, kids fade off at different times, right? And that did happen where one of the children, middle child, decided that he was done with the Discovery Center and then he wanted to go somewhere else. Again, you had that coverage to handle that. So we just, again, removing those friction situations, those stressful situations by bringing in a helper, which really falls into the title of it, rethinking these roles, these titles to rethinking the idea of the babysitter. You can utilize it in so many different ways, not just the idea of like, I need a babysitter for date night. No, why don't you use the household helper to relieve stress in your household? Not a full-fledged nanny, but again, someone that can relieve these pressure points. There's like, you could literally sit down with a list right now, if someone's listening, to the people that are listening, the audience, go through and just write down on a piece of paper all the stress points that you have managing your children and going, wow, wouldn't it be great if I just, as Laura said, have that extra set of hands? Well, guess what? You can. And they're incredibly affordable if you go for that tween route, that babysitter in training, because then you train the individual while they're with you. And then in a couple of years, when they're ready to be full-fledged babysitters, you have someone that's already trained in your ways, knows your household, that you're comfortable with, they're comfortable with you, and they can come right into your household. And now you have a full-fledged babysitter.
I do want to acknowledge one thing, because when we went to the Discovery Center, we weren't using a tween to help us. In that case, if we were going out in public, I would always be using an adult. We do have adults who help us with babysitting. So that is the difference. I would use an adult to help us when we're going out in the public. But when we are home or close to home, that is when I am comfortable using a tween to support us.
So I'll throw it out there. Little IH tip on like, wow, how am I going to find an adult to help me on a Saturday to take my kids out to a public event? All the people that work at daycares, these ECEs, they are all looking for extra work on the weekends.
Yes. And that is something that we covered in episode 6. So if anyone wants to hear more about how to find that support, babysitter, whether it's a tween, teenager, or adult, you can check out episode 6.
That's my cue that I'm going off the track that Laura wants me to go on. So I will give the floor back to Laura. Laura, bring us back on track. Bring me back onto the main highway.
So the focus today is to discuss how your babysitters can really support the household beyond just a date night. Some other ways you can use your babysitters for is reading or homework support. Sometimes the kids, they just need one-on-one attention, and reading has been a real challenge in our household, just because it's chaos if we want to have that one-on-one time at home. So having a babysitter come so they can give undivided attention to one child if they need help with reading or homework can be a great way to support the household there. Another strategy is after school. When school gets out for us, 3:15, 3:30, if you don't have after school care and you do work late, then having a babysitter to lighten the load, just ease the pressure, and to pick up your kids after school and bring them home and get them settled while you're still working or making your way home is another strategy that can help.
I'll throw out another one too, because guys, I'm actually a little tired right now. I'm training to do a rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon, and Laura's like, "What does this even have to do with this episode?" But the relevance is there's a lot of training that comes before this 44-mile, which is 70+ kilometer hike/run that I have to do in April. But to fit all that training in means that I'm not always available at home. So again, if you want to create that free time, 'cause intentional household is all about creating free time to do things that you want to do. So I need to do training to do something that I want to do, which we need more help in the household with things. How do you do that? Well, again, Laura is very supportive of me doing this. And she's also doing something similar to this later on in the year called 29029. And you just bring in people to help out so the other person doesn't feel overwhelmed and stressed. So you can look at it as well going, hey, I really want to do this athletic thing, or I want to take this course at a university or online course, but I have no time. Well, we've just created time for you you can bring a helper in to help the other spouse to then give you the free time to do what you need to do. So that's another way to utilize. Think outside of the box going, well, why would I use my babysitter other than date night? No, just think of them as an extra set of hands. And again, go on that piece of paper and write down all the things that you could use an extra set of hands with. And now you have individuals that you can go out in the market and secure those individuals to help you out.
And lastly, sometimes you just want a break. So we've mentioned in the past that we do schedule a babysitter almost every Friday, if not Saturday. And there have been times when we've scheduled them and I actually haven't felt well and I haven't wanted to do anything. I think you still went out that night, but I didn't want to leave the house because I wasn't feeling well.
I felt terrible and left the house. I've been lying in bed with like a terrible flu, and Laura's like, well, don't you just want to lay down? I'm like, no, I need to get away from the children, and I'll leave the house just to feel terrible somewhere else so that I can get away from the children.
Our kids have a routine of doing movie night if it's a Friday or a Saturday night when we're gone. And so they will be set up in the room with the TV where they're doing movie night. And I have just hung out in a separate part of the house so that I can just relax, not be responsible for them, and have the night off from putting them down. So that's another way. You don't even have to go out, but stay out of their space. And I didn't let them know that I was around. I don't know if they knew that I was home still, but it was a nice break for me. And I made it clear to the babysitter that I was staying home and she was comfortable working with the kids.
And the whole philosophy that we run in our household, and again, 7-year-old, 5-year-old, 3-year-old, bedtime is difficult, is that if you have one night off a week, you can get through the other 6 nights. But if you're just going 7 nights, it's going to be absolutely draining. So if you give yourself one break a week, hey, I'm just going to get through the rest. And again, for us, it's generally Friday nights. Friday nights, we know we don't have to deal with bedtime. Someone else is coming to deal with bedtime. That's a free time for us to do whatever we need to do. And it just makes all the other bedtimes, the 6 other bedtimes, so much more rewarding and filling. And we can enjoy them as opposed to dreading them.
Oh, so you enjoy them?
Sometimes. Not last night. No, last night was bad. But sometimes I do enjoy them.
So we've gone over the different ways we can use our babysitters to support the household. But I want to talk about how we can make superstars out of our household support, the babysitters in that regard, because we have many different babysitters that we use, and some are truly superstars and really are exceptional and can outshine others. We pay them the same base hourly rate. So I want to talk about how you can reward individuals for being superstars, or how you can motivate them or incentivize them to be superstars in your household. So let me give you an example. Quite often when we come home from our night away from the kids, our night off, our kids are often sleeping in our bed. We just tell the babysitter they can sleep wherever we want. We don't care. They're always asleep when we get home, but they are generally sleeping in our bed. So one strategy that you could offer is saying, if we come home and the kids are sleeping in their own beds, then we will offer you an extra $1 an hour. Another strategy you could do is if you find, especially with the teenagers, it can be hard to remind them that when they make a mess, the kids get out all kinds of toys, crafts, activities. Sometimes a bit of a mess can be left behind. But as motivation, if we come home and the house is neat and tidy and a mess is not left behind, then again, you will get an extra $1 an hour. Another thing that you could do, and I'm not talking about them cleaning up your mess, because I don't think it is the responsibility of the babysitter to clean up the mess that you and I have left behind in the house or clean our dishes. But if the kids make a mess, or if all kinds of dishes are left in the sink from the kids eating their snacks, then there is some incentive there to say, hey, if I come home and all of the dishes are clean, then you will get an extra $1 an hour. So just a way to really make it easier for yourself, because you weren't coming home from having the babysitter there and having to clean up a mess or do extra work. Another thing I've heard about is if they even write up a report on how the night went, just a one-pager on how things went. There's some incentive there, giving them $1 an hour to report back on how the night went. Also, like I said, our kids know or have gotten into the habit of every time a babysitter comes, they know it's movie night. However, one night, one of the babysitters, she did show up with a bag of games and activities. That was actually her first time. She had transitioned into that babysitting role on her own from the tween helper. And there was a clear difference because she showed up with this bag of activities and I couldn't believe it. And that wasn't the first night and when they didn't have a movie night. So if your babysitter...
Do you recall if they were pissed or not?
They were thrilled.
Okay,
they couldn't believe all of the activities that the babysitter showed up with. So what I'm saying is...
I could see one of them protesting. So I was just curious.
No, they were thrilled. Okay. And I think the kids, they watch enough TV. So if the babysitter comes and the kids are not having a movie night or not even turning on the TV, that should be a reward. I would definitely give $1 an hour to the babysitter for that.
And yes, viewers and listeners, our kids do watch TV, but not on Sundays.
That's right. They watch plenty of TV, not on Sundays. We've been implementing a no screen Sunday policy in our household. It's gone over really well. But having the babysitter not turn on the TV with them would be incredible. So I would offer an extra $1 an hour for that. And if they did show up with activities or games that they can do with the kids, that would get our kids excited. So that's another way I would offer $1 an hour in advance so that they have an idea, they can come prepared, and then I would follow through on that. So there's some ways that you can motivate them, and then they can see the direct relationship between getting extra money based on their effort that they put in to our household.
So Laura, a lot of times you talk to people and they complain or they're disappointed in certain individuals and how they were acting. But you've been really good in a way that you don't feel that way about situations. And I believe you do that by setting expectations, and not just setting expectations, but then communicating those expectations to the individuals. Why don't you talk more about that?
I do think it comes down to communicating expectations. I mean, this is something that I even do with our Saturday nanny. If our schedule is a little different for the upcoming Saturday, I always send her a text in advance, giving her an idea of a schedule change, a play date, if we're doing an outing, just so that she has an idea and she can mentally prepare. But this is the same with the babysitters who come to support us. I always communicate what is happening in advance so they have an idea truly of what to expect, how the night or how the day will go, how I need them, how they should dress, because we might be going outdoors. So I want to make sure they have the appropriate attire. And if there's anything out of the ordinary, that's not just babysitting. So let's just say, if our housekeeper is away, we do have a babysitter who's really great at offering to walk the dogs if the housekeeper is away. So I will let her know in advance that before she starts the shift, let's just say with the kids, that she could walk, if she can walk the dogs before settling into the household, just so she has an idea there. And then I will let them know if I plan to be home, if they will be home with a nanny instead, or who they will be home with. And just really how the night will go, how they can help, and anything else that I need so that they can anticipate and prepare. And I just don't want to throw them off. And I don't want to ask them anything on the spot because they may not be comfortable doing whatever it is. Let's just say it was a babysitter who has never walked the dogs. I don't want to put them on the spot and ask, hey, would you be comfortable walking the dogs? And they might not actually be comfortable walking the dogs, but they might not be comfortable communicating that. So I do like to communicate expectations, the routine in advance, so they have time to think it through. And then they have time to think through questions. And they also have time to say no if they're more comfortable saying no.
And by setting expectations, you're not setting yourself up for disappointment because you communicated to the individuals what you expect them to do and in advance as well so that they can prepare, or alternatives can be made if it's something that they can't accommodate.
I find the communication and the expectations particularly important when it comes to tweens, because we're not just dealing with the tween. They may be dropped off. Well, generally they are dropped off by their parent and picked up by their parent. So I'm very clear with the start time, the pickup time, if we're leaving the house, so that the parents do have an idea. The parents also, I've never asked a tween to walk the dog.
I was going to say the tweens have not walked the dog.
But I have asked a babysitter in the past, and the parent might have opinions about their child or their teenager even walking the dogs. So they can have a discussion with their parents before responding to me. The other thing that I like to communicate is if it is an early teenager, again, who has supported us when I am home, but is in the transition of babysitting on their own, their hourly rate will change, whether they're with me or if they're at watching the kids on their own. So in that message, I will communicate, okay, so for this, evening of you helping, you will be on your own. So I'm going to pay you $16 an hour so that they have an idea. And also so that I can refer back to what I told them. Or if I'm going to be home, I would say, okay, and so for this, I'm going to pay you $13 an hour.
Well, I'll also add, when you were transitioning from the household helper, that individual, to a babysitter, you also gave them the option to bring a friend helper, and then you set the pay going, hey, if you bring a friend helper, your rate is going to be less. And you can offer, here's the overall number I'm going to provide. So if you do it on your own, I'm going to give you this. If you decide to bring a helper with you, then I'll give this total amount, and then you guys can split it how you want to split it. So and again, we have 3 kids. So for her first night helping us on her own, she did end up bringing a friend to help out, and it went well. So just something to add as well is if you wanted to offer up to your babysitter in training, they can bring a friend that can help them out as well. It's something you can do too. And there's a way you can structure that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I want to add that this babysitter's friend, I realized after I offered it up that I didn't know the friend. So it was a stranger coming into the house who I hadn't really screened, let's just say. So, but in a similar manner to anyone who's starting in our household, I did communicate the expectations to this individual in advance in terms of keeping your phone just by the front, not being on it, and any other rules that we have. But I did have confidence knowing that the babysitter who brought the friend, who is highly responsible, would choose wisely and also have a responsible friend.
And when we did do this first one, this outing that we were away, we were still quite close to home. So it's not something where we were somewhere where we weren't available and we were far away and couldn't get back. That first trial run with this, we were quite close to home and could get home in 5 minutes if we need to.
And that is kind of the difference between us using a young teenager or a teenager versus a 20 or 30-year-old. Generally, if we are kicking around in the neighborhood or a short drive away, there is more comfort, or we are more willing to use a teenager. But if we're going further, we can't be home as quickly. That is when we will use the 20 plus babysitter.
And again, you individuals that are listening, use your discretion. Your comfort levels, right? We do it by time, geographical distance, all that kind of stuff. But who you're comfortable with. And again, going where Laura was talking about the household helper in training, we know the family quite well and everything like that. But again, she has been helping us out for 2 years now, probably, before staying alone with the kids. So you develop a relationship with that individual. You understand how responsible they are. So it allows you to, you're comfortable giving them some authority in regards to them making their own decisions.
And lastly, I just want to say that babysitters, they do age out. They aren't always teens or they aren't always tweens. They become teenagers and they eventually go off to school or they move away. So or they aren't always available. So we like to have, we probably have 5 babysitters who we could call on. And
multiple individuals in training as well.
Yeah. And always
household helpers.
Yes, exactly. And I'm always on the lookout for just to add people into the roster because some will be aging out and we won't have them for much longer.
And I'd like to summarize, or conclude or say that. And this is in all aspects of our life. Go for the cream of the crop, knowing you're going to lose them. You will lose the cream of the crop, but you're better off having an all-star for a short period of time in regards to mediocrity for a long period of time, because you can just find another all-star right after. And that's why you get the roster of individuals, everything like that. But go for the best. Go for the best. You will never be disappointed. You're just going to have to replace them often, but that's okay.
I hope you found this episode helpful. Feel free to DM me if you want to continue the discussion. If you have any questions, any comments, I'm so passionate about this. As you can see, we use babysitters all the time. They have supported us so much in our household. And if you are someone who is looking for household support by using a babysitter, then please reach out because I would love to help you.